Hi, I'm Siobhán Fletcher and welcome to this edition of our newscast. Now this time we're going to have a look at this month's Tynwald sitting. Now a lot happened, but a couple key things stuck out to us and we want to give you a recap on what happened. Earlier this month, the island's Southern MHK said they wouldn't be giving their support to this year's budget if there weren't sufficient funds allocated for the Southern swimming pool. Well, it appeared at the sitting that they were already putting their money where their mouths are, as they led the charge in opposing an annual economic report from government. Let's have a little listen to what went on. One of a number of reports government presumably expected to sail through Tynwald yesterday, the Economic Strategy Annual Report led to an hour and a half of debate in the chamber. To put that in perspective for you, this immediately followed a statement from the Chief Minister on Cape Brunner KC's COVID report, which was all wrapped up in just 14 minutes. As the economic report had not been on the register of business for the allocated amount of time, it first needed to be agreed by members that they were willing for it to be taken at the January sitting, something which immediately hit a bit of a stumbling block.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no.
No.
In this case, 17 MHKs voted for the report to be received and 7 voted against. All the members of the Legislative Council were happy for it to proceed. The 7 against were Anne Corlett, David Ashford, Joni Farragher and all 4 Southern MHKs, Tim Glover, Michelle Haywood, Jason Morehouse and June Watterson. And it's safe to say if you've been following developments down south over the last few days, you could probably hazard a guess why they voted that way.
Visually, this looks good, but is it the right document in the week that the Minister for Education, Sport and Culture says she will cut funding for the Southern Pool? An increasing number of people in the south of the island are feeling alienated by the government, and in terms of that alienation and feeling away from what this government is doing, does this key document provide any reassurance?
There is a distinct lack of strategy around a government that proposes closing down facilities and the impact that that will have both onto retention of people here on the island. We spend lots of time talking about stopping our young people moving away and about recruitment of people onto the island as well. Now, in response to the lengthy debate, Chief Minister Alfred Cannon said the House was at risk of falling victim to political paralysis by analysis.
I do appreciate, when you have a central economic strategy, there are so many different strands that potentially implicate into so many different areas. But honourable members must accept that if we are going to successfully deliver this, we need to stay at the highest level possible and focus on the big picture. I'd suggest that some of the discussions today around the level of detail that honourable members are seeking will drive us into analysis by paralysis by analysis.
In the end, the report was received by the court, with all LegCo members voting for it alongside 17 MHKs. This time, just 6 MHKs made their dissent known, and interestingly, 2 of those 6 had switched sides. Claire Christian and Chris Thomas joined ranks with the crop of 4 Southern MHKs who stuck to their guns in questioning government's economic decisions. Now, as we look ahead to the next Manx budget due next month, the question remains, who will join their cause in that vote? Obviously, since that sitting, the Southern swimming pool incident, as it were, has now been concluded, with funding secured for at least the next year. Now, this month's Tynwald sitting actually ended up going over a couple of days, and the second day saw a similar row erupt amongst members, this time over the island's refugee policy statement and report. A Douglas East MHK accused the Cabinet Office of feigning powerlessness when it came to formulating a policy. The refugee policy statement and report was published in September last year, but was put under the spotlight this month. Joni Farragher moved that the report not be received, arguing that more significant work needs to be done by the Council of Ministers to develop a policy that takes the opportunity to give the overall evidence-based picture of benefit versus cost. I had this report for breakfast the next day. Ms Farragher's views were rejected by Cabinet Office Minister Kate Lord-Brennan, who disagreed.
Here we have another motion before us now, which instead of actually, again, arguing for the mover of this motion to actually say what make the case to Tynwald as to what should happen, we instead have an attack on a government policy, which I would say has been well thought out, and actually there has been engagement with members.
But Ms Farragher won support from some of her political colleagues, including Arbury, Castletown and Maloo MHK Tim Glover and Garth MHK Daphne Kane.
been brought to my feet following the comments given by the Minister of the Cabinet Office on this. I feel compelled to state for the record that this isn't an acceptable way to treat members of this honourable court. The mover has outlined compelling reasons that this document isn't what Tynwald asked for, and it isn't. The motion as passed asks for a policy, but this document is a list of reasons why we can't have a policy.
I fully support the motion and would like to see a policy to resettle refugees being considered on an ongoing basis and not just as an emergency in response to a war.
In short, the Douglas East MHK had tried to convince Tynwald that an independent policy on refugees should be developed, rather than one dependent on our relationship with the UK.
It's immeasurably diminishing and disempowering that government documents use the language utilised here to try to feign powerlessness on the part of our proud country. We built the Laxey Wheel, we raised the BGs, and you might not know this, but we are the oldest continuous parliament in the world. We're not unable to do anything. It seems that we're unwilling, and that's a different thing.
In the end, Minister Lord Brennan was successful in getting the court to accept the policy. She spoke to Manx Radio's political correspondent, Phil Gaughan.
You came over as quite defensive in terms of your comments. Why was that?
So for those members wishing to argue strongly for this, they are perhaps not happy with the government's position, which has been to say that actually because we were asked to put forward, the commitment was for a long-term policy. So the policy that's been put out by the Council of Ministers to say that, actually it needs to be for the government of the day to activate any response. And in doing so, it's really important that the Council of Ministers should have due regard to the resource available at the island, the ability of government to cope with such support, things like housing and education, the availability and support of third sector and the community. In essence, we're saying, if you're going to be a responsible government, you should take account of these things, not just be writing to the UK saying, hello, can we please participate in these schemes, and will you make that happen for us?
Well, this week we spoke to Speaker of the House of Keys, Siobhán Fletcher. He says Tynwald members need to be careful when wording their motions to make sure they properly reflect the issue they're trying to address. Mr Watterson has been a Russian MHK for nearly 20 years. He says members need to be really clear on the point they're trying to make.
There's a difference of opinion on interpretation, and so that's the first lesson to any member of Tynwald looking to move a motion. Be very careful with your words, because what's voted on in the chamber is the words that are on the page in the motion, not whatever commitments have been given to you verbally by others in the chamber.
Obviously, there were a whole variety of issues tackled at this month's sitting, and you can find a roundup of some of those stories on our website. But that's it for Tynwald, at least for this month, and we'll bring you another Tynwald in brief in February.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Little Manx Radio newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.